Hi, I'm Anastasia Mack, and this is part 2 of Q&A session for acrylic painting newbies. And I mean like super newbies, like never painted before kinds of newbies. Let's get to it. What are good sizes of brushes for different kinds of work? I actually don't buy too many different brush sizes. I think I work with maybe 5 or 6 different ones, and here is what I use. So the brush sizes certainly don't have to be complicated. My rule with everything is keep it as simple as possible. And I have my brushes divided into 4 different categories: small, medium, large, and tiny. I call it tiny. It's extra small. With a small sized brush, I usually use number 1 and number 2. They are very close in size, so even if you purchase one of these, it is totally fine. If you're going to buy one, just buy number 1 because it's smaller and allows you to get into more detail. The medium-sized are number 4 and number 6. Again, you can just choose one between these 2 sizes. It doesn't really matter which one, they differ only slightly. And with the large sizes, these are for my background underpainting or for covering large canvases. These are number 10 and number 12. So if you just purchase one brush from each of these categories, you will be all set. You may want to get more than one brush in terms of quantity. So for example, if I have a number 1 brush, the small one, I go through these pretty fast, so I usually purchase like 2-3 at a time, just so I don't have to place an order every time my brush gets worn out. But you don't have to get all the sizes. Just get yourself a small, a medium, a large. And for the tiny brush, this one is Pro Stroke number 1, and it allows me to get into the teeny tiny corners of my painting to do the smallest details. So like something like maybe thin outlines or, tiny highlights on small objects. This brush is pretty cool and pretty helpful. My brushes are all flat. I just prefer to use a flat brush. But again, play around with a round brush if you would like. And if you find that it works better for you, then, that's your brush to use. I'm just very accustomed to using flat brushes. So for my painting style, they are the best. And the brand I use is Creative Mark Pro White. And the reason I use this brand is because I feel that it is a very good quality brand, but it is also very cheap. Acrylic paint is not gentle on your brushes. It wears out your brushes pretty quickly because the acrylic residue gets stuck between the brush hairs, and then your brush just doesn't have the same precision anymore. So, switching out brushes is a frequent occurrence for me. So that's why I like to use high quality but inexpensive brushes. It's a synthetic fiber, and it's sort of a harder fiber. It's not very soft. Like if you were to paint with watercolors or oils, you would want a slightly softer brush. But for acrylics, you want something that is hard and bouncy. So this is why this one works really well for me. And these brushes can be ordered on Jerry's Artarama website because this is their store brand. If you're buying from a different store and if you're purchasing a different brand, you will probably want to look into the sizes and see how their sizes compare because the numbering system with every brand is different in terms of the dimensions of the brush. So number 1 will be the smallest brush, but it may not equal in measurements to this brush, if you know what I mean. It's the smallest size that they have. It may not necessarily be equal to this number 1 brush. So again, start simple, order 1, 2, 3, 4 different sizes, maybe more than one quantity for the smaller brushes. and see which one you use the most and see which one you wear out the fastest, and, keep stocking up as you continue to paint. Do you mix paint with water or buy something for paint to be smoother? Yep, I mix paint with water, but if you want to try something different, you can try mixing your acrylic paint with something like matte medium. So matte medium thins out your paint, and it does make it smoother, but it also makes it more transparent. So in my personal painting style, I don't use a lot of transparent layers. Most of my layers are pretty opaque. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be using transparent layers, because you're going to be developing your own style, hopefully, as you continue to paint more and more. So you can play around with using this matte medium instead of water and just mix it like this. So from here, you can apply your paint to your canvas, get a feel for it, see if you like it better. And I always rinse my brush out in water anyway. So water is always ready for me to rinse, and sometimes I use both water and matte medium. But like I said, for my painting style, if I'm not playing around with matte medium, which is pretty rare, 99% of the time, I just mix my paint with water. And I use a little bit of water, not too much. So it's never like too runny or too transparent. But matte medium is a fun thing to play with, and if you do buy it, you can purchase it in a small amount just to see if you like it. What kind of easel to purchase for a starter set? Easels are, this depends a lot on your personal preference and how you have your painting space set up. You can get a full height easel, which is what I use, because I stand up when I paint. And the reason I stand up when I paint is because it is easier on my back. When I sit down all day to paint, it just makes my back sore and it makes my butt sore, to be honest. I just don't like sitting all day. So I paint and then I take sitting breaks. So if you like to get a standing easel, you really can just go to any of the art store website like Blick or Jerry's Artorama or any other art supplier store website, and just browse through the standing easels and pick one out that's good for your budget. The price range is quite big between easels that are very sturdy and heavy duty or easels that are made for lighter canvases. So it really depends on your painting space, whether or not you like to sit or stand, and how serious you are about, taking up this painting thing. Is it going to be just, once every 6 months hobby for you? Or is it going to be something that you will be doing regularly, at least once a week or so? How heavy are your canvases going to be? So all these things have to be considered before you decide on your easel and whether or not you're going to be sitting down or standing up. If you have a very small amount of space, and you may be sitting at a table and making an occasional small-sized painting at a table, you can get yourself a tabletop easel. And they look like this. So this is a tabletop easel. Here's the back. This is what I use for my in-studio painting workshops. And these are really inexpensive. And again, you can find them on art store websites. So you can just browse, for a tabletop easel and see what looks good to you. So there isn't really any specific easel brand that I would recommend. Just read the reviews. The easel that I use in my studio, I bought it on Craigslist years ago. And I don't know, it probably was made in the 80s, but it's really sturdy and it's really old. But because of its size and how solid it is, it's been working for me just fine. What canvas is good or bad and why? And why those I buy fall apart? Oh no! I've never had a canvas fall apart on me. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. That's pretty bad. It's really simple with canvas, I feel, these days, because Blick, a brand canvas, I guess, is my go-to for, anything small to medium size. So if you're just starting out, something like this, Blick Studio canvas is pretty sufficient for starting up your painting hobby, and they're really not expensive at all. So this canvas is on the cheap side, and I've never had one fall apart, and I've never had any other brand fall apart on me. So I'm sorry that you had to go through that. But basically, when I shop for canvas, I make sure to measure it on all sides to see through that it's not lopsided. So I guess the downside of some of the cheaper canvases is that it might be slightly lopsided. And of course you don't want that. And it's even, becomes a problem when you have to frame your piece if you decide to frame it later. So if I shop in person, I take a measuring tape with me to the store and I just measure, to make sure that this is supposed to be 12 by 12. So I measure to make sure it's 12 inches here and 12 inches here. So 12 inches on all corners. If it's much higher or much lower than 12 inches, that's a problem, right? I check the angle of the stretcher bars to see if there's any warping happening. So sometimes it happens more on larger sized canvases. On smaller, usually it's not a problem. So when I go to an art store and I shop for a larger sized canvas, I lay it down on the floor and make sure it's fully horizontal to verify that there's no warping. And that's about it. Actually, with larger sized canvases, I use this brand because it is a little bit more sturdy on the back. This one is called Blick Premier canvas. So this one just has better stretching on the back and it's more expensive. This one is good for small paintings or, for very beginners who don't know whether or not they're going to keep their piece or display it for a long time. And I also like to use this type of art panel. And it's more expensive than canvas, but it's a nice, sturdy piece. This one is it's Value Series by Ampersand. And the texture of it is very similar to canvas, but it's pretty much like masonite, so it's not a stretched fabric. It's a solid panel. So you may enjoy painting on this too. It's just slightly more pricey than Blick Premier or Blick Studio canvas. So it really depends on your budget. But these are the three types of surfaces that you can start with and, then see which one you like the most and stick with that one. Well, I hope you enjoyed this newbie Q&A session, and if you have any more beginner confusion, I got you, girl or guy. Go ahead and send me a message and let me know what else you need help with. If you found this video useful, like, follow, subscribe, and head over to my website for painting workshops and additional tutorials. Bye for now. Have a colorful day.